Hello, welcome to J Lowe Artist YouTube channel. I'm glad you're here. Thanks for drawing with me. Today we're going to be drawing with charcoal. We're going to be using white and black charcoal. I'm going to be using just a General's charcoal 4B and soft General's white charcoal as well. We'll be drawing on gray paper. You should have a black and white charcoal, a kneaded eraser, and a cotton swab for blending. Let's get started. Okay, when drawing with charcoal, a couple of things just to remember. Number one is that it does smear and it gets a little messy. So I like the pencils just because they're a little cleaner. But we're going to do this on gray paper. This is just gray construction paper. Let's just go ahead and do a sphere, just a real quick sphere. And you just want to go around and around with your white charcoal until you get a nice rounded shape. And again, I'm using the side of my pencil just like I normally do. This is actually a better way of drawing anyway. You get better circles this way than you do with your wrist. And then you decide which direction your light source is coming from. And just say our light source is coming from this direction. You don't need to draw the arrow. But if our light source is coming from over here, we know that we're going to have a little highlight or a little shine right up in here. And since we're drawing with our white charcoal, might as well put that little highlight in there. Might as well just nice and light there. There's our little highlight. We know that we're going to have a shadow over here. We're going to have some reflected light. We also know that there's going to be a cast shadow here. And sometimes when you're drawing, if you think, well, I really want to be able to see that, you can draw in those shapes like this cast shadow. You can draw that in over here. Or you can even go around it and draw some light around the thing and leave the gray out. And it's kind of up to you how you want to do that. You can even blend this a little bit. You can smear it around a little bit if you want to. But we know our highlight is the lightest area. And so we just go ahead and put that right in with our white charcoal. You can now take your black charcoal. If you want to go in and throw in just that little dark area that's there, you know there's going to be a core shadow there. And you can shade that in. And you can also shade in your cast shadow there. And we also know that the shadow is darkest nearer our object because there's less reflected light that bounces around, gets back onto our eye. And so we just kind of throw in that cast shadow a little bit like that. And again, we are avoiding drawing lines around things. Should always avoid that. Because your edges are going to take care of themselves anyway. Now, that is not near as dark as we need it. But maybe we can go in and blend that a little bit. You can always layer in more. And I kind of feel like drawing is very similar to sculpture, in which you start out with a big chunk of something, whether it's wood or stone or clay, and you either remove some or you add some on. And so you start out with your simple shapes when you're drawing, and you just kind of layer it in, just like when you sculpt. You layer in, or subtract, however you're doing it, until you get down to the really tight, fine details. And that's kind of what we're doing here, just layering it in. So if you wanted to, at this time, you could take your cotton swab and do a little blending. Now, the problem is you can't blend the white and then go and blend the black with the same tip. So you have to kind of have a light side and a dark side, okay? So even your cotton swab is going to be like the Force. You're going to have the Yoda side, and you're going to have the Darth Vader side, okay? So it doesn't matter which one you choose. If you choose to do a little bit of white, you can do that. You can take that and blend that out, fuzz up your edges. But as you do, notice that it's no longer a strong contrast. It's kind of fuzzy and soft. And if you wanted that strong contrast, you have to go back into it with some white and really get some white in the middle there so that you get a stronger contrast. But it's kind of up to you, and you have to look at your scrap and say, okay, you know, is it really strong contrast or is it just kind of light? The rest of this, if it were a little lighter, we could kind of keep that white going around on the outside there. Keep it nice and soft and fuzzy on the outside. Then this part is our light side. Even though it's light gray, it has a little bit of value to it. And as it comes over to the dark side here, we may want to blend that. So I'm going to flip over my cotton swab and blend that. Just soften it up. That's really all it's doing. And again, it takes away a lot of the contrast, but it softens your edges. And that's kind of what you want, is those soft edges, especially for something that changes very gradually from light to dark, like a sphere. You can soften that up. You can soften in your cast shadow there. You can soften your edges too if you want to. Sometimes, depending on your light, how it diffuses, you could have very soft, subtle shadows that kind of have fuzzy edges. But our contrast is gone. So now we need to really increase our contrast. So I can come back into that core shadow with my black and heighten that core shadow a little bit, especially right in the center. I can really get that to go fairly dark. I'm not pressing really hard. But in going over it, that helps smooth it out too. You can do circles, you can do cross hatching, however you want to do it. And notice I've left a little edge down in there. That little edge is my reflected light. I also can go into my cast shadow, and we know that the shadow is darker near the object, and so I can go in there and that also helps me to smooth out that area right there where the sphere is. Get that nice and smooth. And as I come away from my object, kind of lighten up until it fuzzes out towards the outside of the shadow. And I can blend that, and maybe I'll need to go back over it again. Maybe I need it really dark in there, you know, heighten that contrast, make things really pop. But I can go over my core shadow here. I can get into where the reflected light is a little bit, because you maybe don't want that much light right in there. Maybe you want a little bit of dimness. And it's kind of up to you how much you put in. But the more you do, the more that form increases and becomes more, and I hear the word realistic quite often. I think what they're meaning is three-dimensional looking. Remember, all drawing is simplified version of realism. I mean, even a stick figure is really a simplified version of realism. Ultra simple. And we have not drawn an edge at all, but yet you can see the edges kind of coming together. I mean, that little white aura that it's getting from our initial drawing. If you don't like that, you can take that out with your kneaded eraser. It doesn't really bother me at all, but you can if you want to. Sometimes you'll see an edge, but really edges are created by shadows. And so if we can use our cotton swab and our charcoal to create that edge naturally without having to draw a line around it, I think it looks better. We can also, if we wanted to, take some of this white and bring it out from our highlight just a little bit, increase that little bit of aura that's around the highlight. That'll help define that upper edge as well. And right now that might feel a little strong, but I think if we blend it with the light side of our cotton swab, gives it a nice tone, nice feel. And I may want to heighten some of this a little bit too, just to maybe I don't even want to blend this part. Maybe I want to just throw in some charcoal and let it go, not blend it. Maybe blend a little bit of it. Heighten that core a little bit more. And you just kind of keep blending in until it's what you want it to be. Now, I tried not to blend the white and the black together. Sometimes it changes the value of it. It becomes kind of I hate to use the word silver, but it kind of gives it kind of a cooler gray, because the paper is kind of a warm gray. So it's just a different kind of gray. And sometimes it looks a little strange. So you either blend the white out to the gray or to the black, and the black into that until you find that fuzzy, soft edge. Try not to mix them. You don't need to mix them, really, because the paper's already gray. Now, there might be times when you think, oh, I'd like to see that edge a little bit more. Use your cotton swab to get to that edge, because in reality, there is no line there. It's an edge created by a shadow. So you just use the cast shadow to create the bottom edge, a little bit of that core shadow to create the side edges, and then even on the top, if you want to just let that go, just let it go. It's okay if it blends in. Nothing wrong with that. Don't be too concerned about edges not being so distinct. You can just leave them out. And if you have to, I mean, look at your scrap. If it's really a strong edge, it's either going to be a light edge or it's going to be a darker edge created by shadow. So you can just kind of draw what you see. And the last thing is, you want to go over everything and make sure your darks are dark and your lights are light. Your grays are probably just going to take care of themselves. Thanks for drawing with me, and I hope you have a lovely day. And hopefully, art has made your life a little better somehow.